But at this point of the dream, I was given the opportunity to see kind of from the heavens looking down on the earth. And what I saw was that I was able to see, the globe was kind of out here like this, and I was able to see very clearly many cemeteries and graveyards. Then I was brought very close to many of these graveyards, and what I saw was a very unusual thing to me, was that the ground was breaking open. Literally the dirt was breaking open kind of violently, and people were coming out of the graves. I know now that that's what I saw. I saw dead people resurrected from the graves. The condition that they came out was very unusual, and the other thing that was unusual is that one cemetery plot headstone would have a person come out of the dirt, and one next to it would not. It seemed to be kind of a not just random, but kind of a categorized launching, so to speak, of these people out of the dirt. Again, it was very okay. As soon as these people disappeared, for a lack of words, wherever they went, mass hysteria began to hit the earth. People had the appearance of absolute despair, hysteria. There was pandemonium everywhere. There was mass chaos, lawlessness, and fear was working everywhere. As the mass pandemonium and despair began to permeate society, there was a very unusual event that happened. Television, telephone, radio, and this other unusual communication device I was able to see into many, many homes in the United States, these white boxes that were about this big that looked to be like televisions. And when I saw these, they were in nearly every single home in the U.S. And they would have words written across them, and occasionally it would almost look as though television was playing through them. All of those media devices were shut down for about a 2-week period. All these things were shut down. One of the things that was happening during this hysteria was many peoples were asking, where did these people go? What happened? And all the globes saw this event. Or they experienced it afterwards. What I saw in people was that literally nearly everyone I experienced had a great look of despair and hopelessness upon their face. Everywhere I went, there was hopelessness. Nobody seemed to be happy about living. This shutdown alarmed all of the peoples, and it lasted for about 2 weeks. Can you imagine briefly tonight all of your communications, your telephone, computers, television, and radio being shut down for a 2-week period of time? Can you imagine the hysteria? Can you imagine, the inability for a supermarket to contact its suppliers to get more supplies, or gasoline, or transactions? It's amazing when you begin to see it kind of unfold the depth. This lasted about 2 weeks. After about 2 weeks of time, television and radio began to be back up and running. However, it was completely different than what was previously being broadcast. The broadcasts were being bombarded nearly everywhere, and they were depicting a soon-to-come new government and leadership. A man would be emerging to lead us. The man finally came on the scene, and he spoke with great eloquence. I wrote these things down exactly as I saw them. He spoke with great eloquence and charisma. He was soothing and promised answers to all current issues. This man was smooth and extremely convincing, able to solve nearly all problems. He was a consummate communicator, and he explained how this removal of people was God's judgment upon them. It was very frightening. Almost immediately, he began to communicate through large screen televisions that were strategically placed everywhere the general populace met. Now, what was strange about this is that this man's speeches and directions for the whole world had to do with new times upon us as human beings, new directives for global peace, and the need to give up current citizenship for world citizenship. At staggering rates, people were buying right into this plan that this man was releasing through the airwaves. at staggering rates. No resistance. No one was fighting it. No one was saying anything publicly. I can't tell you if the airwaves were controlled to the point where you couldn't come on and say certain things. It's just about like that right now in the U.S., by the way. Earlier I had told someone that what it appeared to me with this despair, it was that like every person on earth had just left their mother's funeral. Everyone. Can you imagine that for just a minute? Everybody on planet Earth had to bury their mom that day and was leaving that funeral or memorial service with the weight of that. That's how people appeared. They were very, very grieving, very, very, despondent. I can tell you this, the man that I saw on the television, the man that could do signs and wonders and fix all the problems, I will tell you this tonight, I will never forget his face. Very unusual events happening with this band of followers. Food would multiply, very unusual things would happen. They would pray for people and people would be healed. Just very, very strange things that was abstract to my thinking. Well, they were in this dream, this earthquake hit and began to shake this glass building, and it fell over and killed about 200 people. This earthquake was massive. And I know from what I saw with the globe shaking at this time that it was a worldwide earthquake. The earthquake hit and there was multiple millions of lives lost. Millions, I mean literally millions of lives. I've never heard of an earthquake where millions of people have been killed, ever. The world was completely stunned. The devastation of property and loss was beyond comprehension. It could not be measured. Some regions were so destroyed that they never bothered to send rescue teams in. That's how devastated they were. Now I want to tell you some things that began to happen at this point. This earthquake that hit caused a massive change in weather patterns. At this moment, what began to happen was the normal weather patterns completely changed. The patterns for winter became summer, summer became winter, and you might have a day of snow and a day of heat. The world was in total chaos in its weather patterns. Predicting weather was totally impossible. It was just useless to try to forecast weather. Predictions did not work. Some very unusual things began to happen almost immediately. Crops began to perish, droughts and famine. I was able to see all over the globe the most fertile areas, the most fertile farming areas. I lived at the time of this dream in the most fertile farming area in the whole world, the San Joaquin Valley of California. These areas were totally destroyed with drought and famine. Places that were once fertile were now arid deserts. Now, these so-called Christians were coming to the old man and his team of people, and they were explaining how they once had a relationship with Jesus, but had become cold in their faith and fell away from interest in a life of holy, passionate pursuit of God. Now, for a short period of time, people were coming to Jesus in total surrender. I was able again to see above the globe, and what I saw was very, very unusual. I got to see certain regions of the earth where light rays were just coming out high into the atmosphere. It almost looked like those big searchlights, you know, with the shooting off the globe in many, many directions. I was given the ability to go down into these regions and actually see firsthand what was happening. And let me tell you, it was the most exciting thing I've ever seen. Beams of light, and I began to see 12 regions in the United States of America and all over the globe where these beams would just come out and begin to shine into the atmosphere. When I got down close, what I saw was mass revival hitting the earth. And this was happening on a wholesale basis. Everywhere this was happening. Everywhere. People were praying for sick people and they'd be healed instantly. They would pray for blind eyes and they would open. They would pray for dead people and they would resurrect. They were praying for the lost to come in, and it was, folks, I tell you right now, I could do a little Holy Ghost jig up here almost and start shaking and dancing and shouting in tongues or something. Let me tell you why. Because what I saw was the greatest thing I've ever witnessed since I've been alive. Nothing I've ever witnessed on earth could compare to what I got to see. And this period of time lasted about 3 to 4 months, maybe 6 months max. Maybe that long. It was so incredible. Regions were totally won for Jesus Christ. Now, a short period of time, this outpouring lasted, and literally in regions there was complete light, and then right next door, almost it would be like a city next to it, complete darkness. There began to be an agitation in the spirit realm that was incredible. At this point where all these miracles and things began to happen, this world order began to be very, very angry, because what was happening was beyond their control of the ability to manipulate it and stop it from happening. And this makes the devil very, very mad. You know, he gets very mad when we start functioning in the real power of the living God.
That's right.
That's when he really starts pulling all stops out to try to do anything he can to stop the work of God. This was about to begin to happen. I began to see persecution on unprecedented scales.